I always thought I had a good marriage. My wife Emily and I had been together for over 7 years. We met at our local church, a small community that prided itself on family values and support. We shared friends, attended Bible study together, and volunteered for various church events. In our minds, we were the picture-perfect couple. I was a devoted husband, and Emily was the quintessential wife, or so I thought. But over the last few months, things started to feel off. It began subtly. Emily would come home later than usual from her women's group meetings, a gathering she had been attending every Wednesday for years. At first, I chalked it up to her trying to deepen friendships. I mean, who doesn't need friends, right? She would come home with a new glow, a brightness in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. She attributed it to the fantastic discussions and the spiritual growth she was experiencing. I wanted to be supportive, so I encouraged her to pursue those relationships. Then there were the little things, her phone buzzing late at night, the sudden interest in her appearance. She started wearing clothes that were more figure-hugging than usual, and it wasn't like she was trying to impress me, since I worked late and didn't even notice until my buddy Jake pointed it out during one of our poker nights. "Man, she's dressing up for somebody," he had joked. I brushed it off, but the seed of doubt began to take root. The breaking point came one Tuesday evening when I got home early from work. I had planned a surprise dinner for Emily. I was feeling particularly loving. I knew she liked to unwind with a glass of wine after a long day, so I picked up her favorite bottle on the way home. As I stepped into our house, I noticed something peculiar. The front door was slightly ajar. A chill crept down my spine as I pushed it open further. The living room was dimly lit, and I called out, "Emily." No response. I walked further inside, my heart racing, and that's when I heard it. Laughter. It was coming from our bedroom. I stood there frozen, my mind racing. I tried to convince myself it was just the TV or something, but my gut told me otherwise. As I tiptoed down the hallway, I heard her voice, high-pitched and giddy. It was a sound I hadn't heard in a while, a sound that felt foreign now. I reached the door, my hand trembling as I gripped the doorknob. I could hear another man's voice, deep, smooth, too intimate. I swung the door open, and there they were. Emily, sprawled out on our bed, her hair fanned across the pillows, and a guy I recognized from church, Mike. My heart dropped. They were laughing together, clearly having a good time, and I felt like a ghost in my own home. They both froze, wide-eyed like deer caught in headlights. Time stopped. I stood there, mouth agape, trying to process what my eyes were seeing. Emily's expression shifted from surprise to a guilty, defiant smirk. "Oh, it's not what it looks like," she said, though it was obviously everything I feared it was. The confrontation that followed was surreal. I felt anger boiling inside me, a hot wave of rage and disbelief. "Not what it looks like. You're in our bed with another man," I shouted, my voice shaking. She just rolled her eyes as if I was the unreasonable one. "I can explain, okay? It's not like we're doing anything serious." The betrayal cut deep, sharper than any knife. I could hardly wrap my head around her nonchalant attitude. The woman I had trusted with my heart was reducing our marriage to a casual fling. As I stormed out of the room, my mind was racing. I couldn't believe this was happening. I felt like my whole world had flipped upside down. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming. How could she do this to me? I had devoted my life to our relationship, and here she was, betraying me with someone from our church. I needed to confront this reality, to come to terms with what had just happened. But where do you even start when your heart is shattered? The questions flooded my mind. What would I do next? How could I even begin to process this betrayal? I had only just begun my journey into the storm that lay ahead. The days that followed the discovery felt like an endless blur. I had stormed out of the house, my heart racing with rage and confusion. I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, finally pulling into a parking lot at a nearby park. I sat in my car, staring blankly at the trees swaying in the wind, the sound of birds chirping almost mocking me. My perfect life had crumbled in an instant. I felt lost. I couldn't go home, not yet. The thought of being in that house, the place that had once felt like a sanctuary, now felt like a prison filled with memories of deceit. I thought about Emily and Mike, how they had laughed and shared intimate moments in our bed, a space that had held our love and dreams. The betrayal weighed heavily on my chest, making it hard to breathe. After hours of sitting in the park, I decided to call Jake. He was my best friend, and I needed to talk to someone who could help me process what had just happened. I knew he would be there for me through thick and thin. He picked up quickly, probably sensing my agitation. "What's going on, man?" he asked, his tone immediately shifting from casual to concerned. "I found Emily cheating on me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt the tears threatening to spill, but I fought them back, not wanting to seem weak. There was a moment of silence on the other end before Jake responded. "Dude, I'm so sorry. Where are you?" I told him I was at the park, and he was there in no time. When he arrived, I poured my heart out. I recounted the events of that day, how I had seen them together, the laughter that echoed in my ears, the betrayal that felt like a stab to my gut. Jake listened intently, his expression shifting from shock to anger as I spoke. "That bastard. I can't believe he would do that to you, especially with someone from church," he said, his fists clenching in frustration. "Yeah, it's sickening," I replied, feeling the weight of my emotions begin to swell again. "I just don't know how to move forward. I love her, but how can I ever trust her again?" Jake placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You need to think about what you want, man. Do you want to try and work it out or just cut your losses? She doesn't seem remorseful at all." "That's a huge red flag." His words resonated with me. I realized that deep down, I was still clinging to the hope that we could work through this, that we could somehow rebuild our marriage. But my heart was heavy with doubt. I had seen the way she had treated my trust as if it were nothing. After our conversation, I decided to head home. I needed to confront Emily again, to demand answers. I walked through the door, my resolve as strong as the anger coursing through me. Emily was sitting on the couch, her head buried in her hands, clearly upset but not enough to feel any guilt. I could see her makeup was smeared, the telltale signs of tears, but there was a part of me that felt no sympathy. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. "I know you're angry, but you don't understand." "Don't understand what?" I cut her off, feeling the heat rise in my chest. "Don't understand that you betrayed me in the worst way possible. You think I care about your excuses. You were in our bed with him, Emily." She sighed, a dramatic gesture as if I was the one making a scene. "It was a mistake. I was confused, and Mike and I just we connected. You've been so distant lately." "Distant?" I scoffed. "You think cheating on your husband is the solution to feeling disconnected? We could have talked about it. Instead, you jumped into bed with someone else." Emily rolled her eyes. "You always act so high and mighty. Just because you go to work and come home doesn't mean you know me anymore. You've changed, too." This was classic deflection, and I could see it for what it was. "I've changed because I've been trying to provide for us. I didn't know I was supposed to be your emotional support and your excuse for infidelity." We went back and forth, but there was no resolution. She kept dodging accountability, blaming me for everything, and I felt the anger boiling inside me. I realized I needed to step back and think clearly. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. I thought about the man Emily had chosen over me. It felt so surreal. I felt alone, but I also felt a flicker of strength igniting within me. I was done being her punching bag. I loved her, but love couldn't excuse betrayal. I needed to take control of my life. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I would gather my thoughts, put a plan into action, and find a way to reclaim my life, my dignity. I had to confront this head-on and decide what I wanted, not what she expected of me. It was time to take a stand. The days that followed my confrontation with Emily were tense and emotionally exhausting. I felt like I was living in a war zone, constantly on edge, waiting for the next explosion. I had resolved to take control of my life, but that didn't necessarily mean I had all the answers. The anger was still fresh, and I had no idea how to navigate the wreckage of our marriage. I threw myself into work. It was easier to focus on projects and meetings than to think about home. But even in the office, my mind was plagued by thoughts of betrayal. I couldn't shake the image of Emily and Mike together, that laughter echoing in my head like an unwelcome song on repeat. I tried to reach out to old friends, but I felt like a pariah, a man whose life had crumbled into dust. Jake continued to support me, checking in regularly, inviting me out for drinks, and encouraging me to think about what I really wanted. He was my anchor, the voice of reason amid the storm of my emotions. One evening, after a particularly long day, he suggested we grab dinner at a bar downtown. I reluctantly agreed, hoping that some time away from home would help clear my mind. As we sat at the bar, beers in hand, I watched the people around us. Couples were laughing, sharing intimate moments. I felt a pang of jealousy mixed with sadness. How do people just move on? I asked Jake, my voice barely above a whisper. They just do, man, but you need to take your time, don't rush into anything. You've been through a lot, he replied, his tone serious. But you also deserve to be happy. His words struck a chord, and I began to realize that I had been so consumed by Emily's infidelity that I had forgotten about my own happiness. I had spent years trying to be the perfect husband, only to be repaid with betrayal. I needed to reclaim myself, to figure out where I stood now that the foundation of my life had been shattered. In the days that followed, I found myself thinking more about what a life without Emily could look like. The thought was terrifying but freeing in a way. I started to assess our marriage without the rose-colored glasses I had been wearing. It became clear to me that Emily had been changing long before the affair. She had been pulling away, and I had ignored the signs, convincing myself everything was fine. I decided to take some time for myself. I started visiting the gym again, something I hadn't done since before the wedding. I found solace in the workouts. Pushing myself physically seemed to help clear my mind. I also took up hiking on the weekends, immersing myself in nature and forcing myself to breathe again. I needed to rediscover who I was outside of my identity as Emily's husband. After a week of solitude and reflection, I finally decided to confront Emily again. It was clear to me that we couldn't simply sweep this under the rug. I needed clarity, and so did she. I wasn't sure if I wanted to save our marriage or end it, but at this point I just wanted the truth. When I walked into the house that evening, I found Emily sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her phone. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mix of surprise and apprehension. "You're home early," she said, trying to sound casual. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. She sighed and nodded, pushing her phone aside. "Okay, what's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about everything." I paused, searching for the right words. "I don't want to live in this limbo anymore. We need to either work through this or accept that it's over." Her eyes widened, and I could see a flicker of fear in them. "You're being so dramatic, can't we just fix this?" she pleaded. "Fix what exactly? You cheated on me, Emily. I can't just pretend that didn't happen. I need to know where we stand." She looked down, her fingers fidgeting with the fabric of her shirt. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness." "A moment of weakness? You think that excuses everything? You need to understand how much this hurt me," I said, my voice rising with emotion. "I thought we were building a life together, and you threw all of that away for a fling." "I was lonely," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You were always working, and I felt neglected. So you decided to sleep with someone else. That makes zero sense, Emily. You could have talked to me. We could have worked on it together," I snapped, frustration boiling over. She looked up, and for the first time I saw genuine sorrow in her eyes. "I'm sorry, okay? I didn't think it would go that far. I thought it was just flirting, and then it got out of control." "Flirting? You think that makes it better? You crossed a line, and now I don't know if I can trust you again. I'll do anything to earn your trust back," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I love you. I want us to work." "Do you really mean that, or is this just another excuse?" I asked, my heart pounding. Emily reached out, her fingers brushing against my arm. "I swear I'll change. I'll prove it to you." I pulled away, shaking my head. "Proving it will take more than words. I need to see action, not just promises. You've put me through so much pain. I don't even know if I want to stay in this relationship anymore." Her face fell, and I could see the fear creeping in. "Please don't say that. I don't want to lose you." At that moment, I realized that I needed to take control of my life, regardless of what Emily wanted. I had to prioritize my own happiness. "I need time to think," I said firmly. "I can't make a decision right now. I need to figure out what I want, and you need to understand that you've broken something between us." With those words, I walked away, leaving Emily sitting at the kitchen table, her expression one of despair. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, but also a strange sense of empowerment. I was finally taking a stand for myself. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Would I find the strength to move on, or was there still a chance to salvage what we had? Only time would tell, but I knew one thing for sure: I was no longer going to be a passive participant in my own life. I was ready to fight for what I deserved, even if it meant letting go of someone I once loved dearly. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions, a constant battle between my heart and my mind. After my confrontation with Emily, I decided to give myself some more space, both physically and emotionally. I rented a small apartment not too far from our house, a temporary refuge where I could gather my thoughts and truly assess my next steps without the constant reminder of our shared life. It was a strange feeling, the freedom tinged with sadness. I kept in touch with Jake, who had become my sounding board during this tumultuous time. "You need to focus on yourself, man," he advised as we sat at our usual bar the week after my move. "This is your time to heal. Don't let her manipulate you into feeling guilty for wanting to take care of yourself." I knew he was right. I had spent years trying to be the perfect husband, and it had led me straight into betrayal. I started to explore my own identity outside of the marriage. I began to reconnect with old friends, taking up hobbies I had abandoned for the sake of our relationship. I joined a local hiking club, making new friends who shared my love for the outdoors. But as I immersed myself in this new chapter of life, Emily continued to reach out. She would text, call, and even show up at my new place. At first, I was receptive, wanting to see if we could come to some sort of understanding. But every time we talked, I felt that familiar tension creeping back in. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I received a text from Emily asking if we could meet up. I hesitated, but a part of me still wanted to hear her out. So we arranged to meet at a cafe that had been a favorite of ours. I didn't expect much, but felt it was important to give her a chance to explain herself again. When I arrived, Emily was already seated, nursing a coffee. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, but I couldn't ignore the heaviness in my heart. I sat down, and the usual small talk felt forced. The weight of our situation loomed over us. "Thanks for meeting with me," she said softly, her voice lacking the confidence I had come to expect. "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "You wanted to talk." She took a deep breath, her hands fidgeting with the napkin on the table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking too, about what happened. I realize I messed up big time." I looked at her, waiting for the next part, the part that would hopefully illuminate what she had learned from this experience. And I want to make things right," she said, her eyes pleading. "I know it's going to take time, but I promise I'll go to counseling, do whatever it takes to earn back your trust." Her words hung in the air, and I found myself grappling with the remnants of my feelings for her. A part of me still cared deeply, but I couldn't ignore the scar she had left on my heart. "Emily, it's not just about promises. I need to see actual change, actual effort. This isn't something you can just fix overnight." "I understand," she said, her voice trembling. "And I know that I have to prove it to you. I just want the chance to show you that I can be better." We talked for a while longer, but I left the cafe feeling unsettled. I could see the desperation in her eyes, but I also knew that I was at a crossroads. I didn't want to fall back into the comfortable patterns of our old life, the ones that had led to this painful place. Over the next few days, I took some time to reflect. The idea of going to counseling together was appealing, but I had to be honest with myself. I was still hurt, and I had to prioritize my healing first. I reached out to a therapist for myself, recognizing that I needed professional guidance to navigate all of these feelings. I scheduled my first session, eager to gain perspective on what I was experiencing. During that first session, I poured out my heart. I talked about the hurt, the betrayal, and the whirlwind of emotions that had taken over my life. My therapist listened intently, helping me unpack my feelings without judgment. "It's important to acknowledge the pain," she said. "You're allowed to feel angry and betrayed. It's a natural response to infidelity." As the weeks went by, I found that therapy offered me a space to process everything. I began to understand that I needed to focus on my own journey to healing instead of getting caught up in Emily's need for redemption. I started setting boundaries with her, limiting our discussions to only what was necessary. Meanwhile, Emily continued to reach out, and I could see her beginning to change. She started attending church services on her own, volunteering to help with various charity events, and seeking accountability from close friends. I felt a strange mix of emotions watching her transformation. I wanted to be happy for her, but I was still processing the hurt she had caused me. One night, after a particularly eye-opening therapy session, I found myself sitting on my balcony, staring at the stars. I thought about my life, about who I was becoming. I realized that it was time to take a step forward, whatever that meant for my relationship with Emily. I had spent so long feeling lost, and now I was beginning to find myself again. When Emily called the following day, I decided it was time for another conversation. We met at a local park, away from the memories of our shared life. As we walked, I could see the determination in her eyes, but I also noticed the uncertainty. "Things have changed for me," I began, my heart racing. "I've been going to therapy and it's helped me see what I need. I don't want to rush into anything, but I also want to be honest with you." Her expression shifted, a mix of hope and fear. "What do you mean?" "I think it's important for both of us to figure out who we are individually before we can even think about rebuilding what we had. We can't just jump back into a relationship without addressing the issues that led us here," I explained. "I agree," she said, her voice steady. "I know I have to prove myself and I'm willing to do whatever it takes, but I also want you to find your happiness, whether that's with or without me." Hearing her say that was a turning point for me. It was the first time I felt like she truly understood the gravity of her actions. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "Then let's take this slow. Let's focus on ourselves first and see where that leads us." As we parted ways that day, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It wasn't a definitive resolution, but it was a step in the right direction. I was reclaiming my life and identity while allowing Emily the space to grow as well. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in months I felt hopeful. I was learning to trust myself, to navigate the complexities of love and betrayal, and to ultimately find the strength to move forward. The journey wasn't over, but I was ready to face whatever came next. As the weeks turned into months, the journey I was on felt like a constant ebb and flow. I was learning to navigate my own emotional landscape while remaining open to the possibility of what could happen with Emily. We had established a sense of boundaries, focusing on personal growth rather than the immediate pressures of fixing our relationship. Each of us was on our own path, but it felt like those paths were beginning to cross again, albeit cautiously. I continued my therapy sessions, and they became a cornerstone of my healing process. I learned to express my feelings without fear of judgment and to confront my anger head-on. My therapist helped me recognize that I had every right to be hurt, but I also had the power to decide how I wanted to move forward. Meanwhile, Emily was making strides of her own. I could see the changes in her behavior. She was consistent with her volunteer work at the church, attending support groups, and even reaching out to friends from her past. It was as though she was rediscovering herself in a way that had long been suppressed. I felt a mix of admiration and skepticism. While I was proud of her efforts, I couldn't shake the feeling that the scars of betrayal were still fresh in my mind. One evening, after a long day at work, I found myself scrolling through social media. I stumbled across a post from Emily, showcasing her recent efforts at a charity event. She looked genuinely happy, her smile brighter than I had seen in a long time. Beneath the surface, however, I felt a pang of jealousy. I couldn't help but question whether that happiness was authentic or a mask for something deeper. The next day, during one of our casual check-ins, I decided to address my feelings. "I saw your post about the charity event," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "It looked like you had a great time." Her expression shifted to one of pride. "Thanks, it was really fulfilling. I've been working with some great people, and it's nice to feel like I'm making a difference." "That's awesome," I replied, but I couldn't hide my apprehension. "Do you feel like you're doing this for yourself or just to Show everyone that you've changed. Emily paused, her brows furrowing. What do you mean? I mean, are you doing this for you, or is it more about proving something to me or others? I asked, watching her reaction closely. She sighed, looking down for a moment. I think it's a bit of both. I want to show you that I'm capable of being better, but I also need to do this for myself. I've realized I can't depend on anyone else for my happiness. Hearing her say that was a breakthrough. It was a step in the right direction for her self-awareness. That's good to hear, I said, trying to keep the conversation constructive. Just remember, it's okay to be vulnerable and uncertain. I'm still figuring things out too. We continued our conversation, discussing our separate paths, and I felt a shift in our dynamic. The old patterns of blame and resentment were being replaced by a sense of understanding. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. As the weeks rolled on, I started to consider the possibility of reconciling with Emily. I wasn't ready to jump back into a relationship just yet, but I realized that I had begun to see her in a different light. The guilt that had once clouded my judgment was starting to fade, replaced by a cautious optimism. At the same time, I continued my own personal growth. I began to set new goals for myself, both professionally and personally. I started exploring new hobbies like photography and cooking, which allowed me to express myself creatively. I found joy in discovering new passions, and it helped me build confidence in my own identity outside of my marriage. Then, one fateful evening, everything changed. I had invited Jake over for dinner to celebrate my newfound sense of self. As we sat around the table, laughing and reminiscing about old times, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. "Can we talk? I have something important to say." My stomach dropped. I excused myself from the table, feeling a mix of anxiety and anticipation. I hadn't heard that tone from her in a while, and I instantly knew this conversation would be different. When I arrived at the cafe where we had met before, I found her waiting for me, her expression serious. "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to read her demeanor. "I've been doing a lot of reflecting," she began, her eyes earnest. "And I've realized that I can't keep waiting for you to choose me. I need to take responsibility for my actions, and I need to move forward in a way that's healthy for both of us." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "What do you mean?" "I think it's time for us to take a break, not just from each other, but from the idea of us," she said, her voice steady. "I need to focus on my own healing, and I think you do too. I don't want to drag you down while I figure things out." Her words hit me like a freight train. I had prepared for many conversations, but this wasn't one of them. "Emily, I didn't expect this." "I know," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "But I've realized that if we keep holding on to the past, we'll both miss out on the opportunity to truly grow. I love you, but I know that love isn't enough right now." I sat back, processing her words. It was a heart-wrenching decision, but I could see the wisdom in it. She was right, we both needed time apart to truly understand ourselves before even thinking about coming back together. "Okay," I said softly, trying to keep my emotions in check. "If this is what you feel is best, then I support you. I want you to find happiness, even if it means being apart." As we spoke, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The weight of uncertainty was lifting, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was actively choosing my own path. We hugged tightly, both of us aware that this could be the last time we embraced like this for a while. I left that cafe with a heavy heart but a clear mind. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I felt empowered knowing that both of us were committed to finding ourselves first. As I drove home, I realized that this was not the end, but rather a new beginning for each of us. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that true healing must start from within. The decision Emily and I had made to take a break from our relationship hung in the air like a bittersweet symphony. It was a hard choice, but deep down, I knew it was the right one. The next few months became a period of profound transformation for both of us. We focused on our individual healing journeys, allowing ourselves the freedom to rediscover who we were outside the confines of our marriage. In the weeks that followed our conversation, I threw myself into my therapy sessions. I learned about the importance of self-love and self-acceptance. I began documenting my thoughts and feelings in a journal, articulating the complexities of my emotions. It was cathartic in a way I hadn't expected. Each word felt like a release, a step toward reclaiming the man I had lost in the chaos of betrayal. As the summer rolled in, I found solace in nature. The hiking club I had joined became a second family to me. The camaraderie, the laughter, and the shared experiences helped me heal. I felt lighter each time I reached the peak of a trail, the sense of accomplishment reinforcing the idea that I was capable of achieving my goals, both big and small. Meanwhile, Emily was also making strides. I would occasionally hear updates through mutual friends. She was attending therapy, volunteering more, and focusing on her personal growth. I could see her embarking on a journey of self-discovery that had been long overdue. It was heartening to know that she was taking responsibility for her actions and working to understand herself better. Yet there were moments when I missed her terribly. I would catch myself reminiscing about the good times, the laughter we shared, the inside jokes that felt like whispers of a past that lingered just out of reach. I had to remind myself that those memories didn't erase the hurt, but were a part of a larger tapestry of our time together. As summer transitioned to fall, I felt a shift within myself. I started to entertain the idea of what life might look like after our break. I began exploring new relationships, not in a romantic sense, but in a way that allowed me to form genuine connections with people who shared my interests and values. I started to feel like the version of myself that I had lost. Then one day, while attending a local art fair, I bumped into Emily. My heart raced as our eyes met across the crowded venue. We hadn't seen each other in months, and it felt surreal to be standing there, both visibly changed. "Hey," she said, a tentative smile spreading across her face. "It's good to see you." "Hey," I replied, my voice steady despite the wave of emotion surfacing. "You look great." "Thanks." "You too," she said, looking genuinely pleased. "I've been working on myself, you know." "I can tell," I replied, warmth flooding over me. "I'm proud of you." The conversation flowed surprisingly well. We laughed about shared memories and discussed our personal growth. I could sense a newfound respect between us, a mutual acknowledgement that we were both on our own journeys. As we talked, I felt a familiar bond re-emerging, but it wasn't the same as before. It was different. It was grounded in respect and understanding, rather than the turbulent undercurrents of betrayal and hurt. I realized that I wasn't approaching this meeting with the same feelings of longing or anger. Instead, I felt a sense of peace. "Where do we go from here?" Emily asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. I took a moment to reflect. "I think we keep focusing on ourselves. I'm not saying we have to rush into anything, but if the time comes for us to reconnect, I want it to be on a foundation that's solid." She nodded, her expression serious yet hopeful. "I would like that. I want to see where life takes us, but I'm committed to being the best version of myself first." As we parted ways that evening, I felt a lightness in my heart. It was as if a weight had been lifted, the burden of resentment dissolving into the cool autumn air. I realized that I didn't need to know what the future held for us. What mattered was that we were both actively working on becoming better individuals. In the months that followed, I continued to pursue my passions, expanding my circle of friends and deepening my connection with myself. I focused on what brought me joy, be it hiking, photography, or simply enjoying a quiet evening with a good book. I had grown comfortable in my own skin again, and it felt liberating. Emily, too, flourished. We often crossed paths at mutual gatherings, and each interaction felt more genuine than the last. We shared updates on our progress, and each conversation reaffirmed the growing respect we had for each other. As winter approached, I found myself reflecting on everything that had transpired. The journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative. I had learned the importance of self-worth, the depths of forgiveness, and the healing power of time. One chilly evening, I received a text from Emily inviting me to join her for coffee. I felt a flutter of excitement mixed with nerves, but knew I was ready for whatever conversation awaited. As I walked into the cafe, I spotted her at a window table, her smile brightening the dimly lit room. "Hey," she said, waving me over. "Hey," I replied, settling into the chair across from her. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she said, her gaze steady, "about what we went through and how far we've both come. I have too," I admitted. "I think we've both learned so much about ourselves. Do you think it's possible for us to start again, not just as we were, but as two people who have grown and changed?" Emily asked, her vulnerability shining through. I paused, weighing my feelings carefully. "I think it is, but I want to take it slow. We've both been through a lot and we owe it to ourselves to do this right." She smiled, a genuine expression of hope and understanding. "I completely agree. Let's take our time." As we sipped our coffee, the conversation flowed effortlessly. I felt a renewed sense of connection, anchored in mutual respect rather than the shadows of the past. Though I didn't know what the future held for us, I felt a sense of peace in knowing that whatever direction we chose to take, we were doing it together, not as the couple we once were, but as two individuals committed to personal growth and authenticity. I realized that sometimes the most profound love stories are the ones that evolve over time, shaped by trials, heartache, and healing. And while the road ahead remained uncertain, I was ready to embrace it, knowing that both Emily and I were capable of forging a new path, one built on trust, understanding, and the promise of a brighter future.